Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Mic Drop. I'm your host, Mike. Um, Today's segment's going to be a little bit hard, just because it brings to light a different facet of the corruption that was going on in Middlebury. And this one may be a little bit tough for me to get through, but that's okay, because it's my truth. I'm an emotional guy, and if it's got extra emotion in it from time to time, it's because I can't hold it back. So that's why they call it the mic drop. I can say whatever I want and drop. Some of you guys may have recalled that when I went to the school board meeting last Tuesday, we originally had set up to just kind of sit along the sidewalk, like in front of the Essenhaus parking spots, aimed kind of towards the administration center. Just so we could have our volume out there. Wasn't going to block any traffic, wasn't going to try to mess up anybody's day. It just seemed like kind of a good public place out of the way. You know, sidewalks not a lot of people get for, from 4 to 4:30 or 4 to 5 o'clock on a Tuesday. It's not the most used sidewalk. So, this was my plan going into it. And for those of you that don't know what happened prior to the video starting, I'll tell you now. I showed up at 3:45, and I grabbed at the time I just had a megaphone, a lawn chair, and a cooler, just with some bottled water. And that's all I was going to set up right there on the sidewalk as you turn into the Essenhaus on the road that connects with the administration center. And the minute I got the megaphone out to test it, Joel Miller, the current owner of the establishment, or runner, I don't know, the guy who runs the place, comes out in his little hopper, and he asks me what I'm doing. And I told him that we are, and at the time I'd been joined by about 3 or 4 kiddos, and more were coming later, but they were just kind of standing there along with me. And I said, hey, we're here to advocate for the marginalized and the gaslighted and the bullied students that Middlebury Community Schools doesn't seem to care about as much as everybody else. So that's what we're doing here. There's a school board meeting going on. I would be at the school board, Mr. Joel, but they put a trespass on me because reasons they won't say that don't make any sense. So that's why we're here. Now, you would think a prominent member of the community like Joel Miller of the Essenhaus would care about all of the students in Middlebury community. The reason why this is sad is because I found out that that is not true, at least according to my truth. There have been a couple of stories that I've heard come in about Joel Miller since that school board, and I didn't necessarily know if I was going to drop something on this or not, but the need kept gnawing at me to do so because this may have affected some of the other children and some of the other parents and community members that have been bullied or manipulated or made to feel like they aren't worth humanness by the owner of the Essenhaus, which is kind of like, this is why it's breaking my heart, actually, because every time I've been at the Essenhaus, it's always seemed like a nice family establishment where they care about everybody. And it turns out that the Essenhaus is much more like the corrupt Middlebury entitlement schools system than I had originally given it credit for. In my experience talking with Joel, it was brief. It was about 5 minutes because I could determine within the first 60 seconds that Joel didn't care about the marginalized youth of Middlebury Community Schools. He cared about his business. Now, I'm not going to hate a guy for caring about his business. I understand that. It's why, I was hoping that I could continue to advocate at the school board meetings, but they're making that legally impossible. So we look for, areas that are within earshot that we can still be heard. And you'd think when you drop something like, oh, we're here to advocate for the marginalized youth of Middlebury, that if you really cared about your community, you may listen a little bit longer about why that they're there before you try to shut them up and shoo them away. And so my conversation with Joel went like this. Joel said, we have a flea market going on today, and the noise that you are going to provide here is going to interfere with that. So then I looked at him in the eye and I said, okay. I said, Joel, are you asking me to leave your property? Because at that point he had fully explained to me why the sidewalk in front of the Essenhaus was his property. I said, what about the grass in front of it? He goes, well, we've been cutting that grass for many, many years, so I think it is. Oh. So you're one of those Middlebury entitlement types that think whatever they says goes. Okay, well, let's play with this a little bit and just see how entitled you really are. Joel, I'm not going to leave. And then Joel got real quiet and looked at me and he said, are you threatening me? I laughed. Imagine thinking yourself so important that that would be a threat to you. Joel, you're less than a speck of sand to me right now, dude. Because there are 7.7 billion people in this planet, and I love all of them because they breathe. That includes you. But you don't get to throw your piece of sand in front of everybody else's just because you feel like it. So I asked Joel, I said, Joel, would you like to help me find a different place that I could continue my advocacy as to not impede your business? A very logical question, and you'd think if a helpful person would want to be helpful, they would maybe engage in some of that conversation. But no, that was shut down immediately. No, that's not my job to do that. I just think that you need, okay, all right. So now you're clearly defining what parts of this area you're entitled to and which ones you don't want to bother with. You have officially shown your colors as most Middlebury corrupt employees that I've met. So I go on further. And I say, Joel, I need you to tell me directly if you would like me to leave your property. And he said, well, I'm asking. And I said, that's not telling. I said, I will adhere to your request if you would give any of us the time of day to talk. But when I was trying to explain to you what was going on, you had the gall to look at me and say, you know, most counselors that you've met know when to be quiet. Oh, Joel, you really picked the wrong guy when it comes to quiet, huh? Here's what I've learned about Joel since this time. He doesn't like to be video recorded. In fact, while I was recording, I actually did record Joel, and I asked him if he would ask me to leave publicly, like on the YouTube stream that I was getting ready to do. It was about 4:02 at that point, so I was a little behind, and I wanted to get started, but Joel was impeding my progress. So I said, I'm going to start, and you can either be in it or not, but you're going to have to tell me to leave live. And he said, I don't want to be filmed. I said, that's great. I'm sure you don't. Too bad. First Amendment says I can record anything I want on public property. So you know what I did? I stepped onto public property off of your private property, and I began recording. Now, Joel thinks that if I'm on the Essenhaus property, he's God. Well, his parents were when they founded it, and then they sold it to his spoiledness, and he's been running it like its own little entitled corruption shop the entire time. Now, I'll explain this to you because some of you guys are like, oh my God, the Essenhaus? Like, that's the best place ever. How could you say that? Just like Middlebury Community Schools, Das Dutchman Essenhaus caters to about 85% of Middlebury community. And they all need to look exactly the way that the Essenhaus wants. No deviation in uniform, no deviation in personality, no deviation in etiquette, no deviation, period. No differentiation almost exists. So, when one of the students that was standing next to me started to advocate at Joel for his corrupt behaviors, Joel got quiet. Again. So then I continued to record. And as I was walking away, I said to Joel, we are going to do everything that you ask legally. We are leaving right now. And so I started walking towards the administration center. Now Joel's hollering over at me. He's like, I didn't consent to be recorded. And I'm like, Joel, you stopped being important the second you stopped thinking that anybody else was less important to you. That's how it works with me. If you put yourself above, I immediately put you below. It's called balance. And you guys, the entitled people up there that think that they're untouchable, that want to stand above everybody else, I'll bring you low too, as I already have, and will continue to do, because your truth needs to be shared. But you guys don't want your truth shared because it's corrupt. So I'm going to share it for you. For as often as people will give me the information that is truthful to their testimony and their experience, I will share those stories every day. So Joel, this one's for you, from me. The last time we looked at each other eye to eye, and you told me that most counselors, know when to be quiet, I'm going to look at you right back in the eye. I'm going to say most owners of prominent establishments within a community know when to be quiet too. And your tiny little power of the Essenhaus goes from there in Middlebury, and I think there's another one, Der Essenhaus, down in Florida. That's about where your power ends. It's really, really small. It's actually smaller than Middlebury Community School Board. So Joel, whatever piece of sand you're standing on that thinks that you're above everybody else, you're not. You're not even above the kid that was standing next to me telling you how corrupt you ran the place. That person is worth more to me right now than you are, because her truth didn't put anybody else's truth down. She just shared hers. Yours started with putting somebody else down. That makes you corrupt. So, Joel Miller, shame on you for being a part of the problem. And the more I hear about the corruptness that continues on through, the more I hear about how the local businesses are some of the ones that are helping to perpetuate the corruption within Middlebury Community Schools, because they want a certain type of student graduating to come work for them afterward. I thought about saying this, and I thought about not saying it, but I'm going to say it anyway, and I'm going to try to say it as clearly as I possibly can. When you get a chance, if you would like, I would like you to Google the term grooming. And it's going to have immediate negative sexual connotations for what it actually stands for. However, the process in which someone is groomed is very similar to the way that the students are supposed to look and supposed to graduate and supposed to act and supposed to. Because if you're not doing what you're supposed to, well, then you're in trouble. And if you're in trouble, then you're doing it wrong, and therefore immediately the corrupt people of Middlebury put you beneath their notice. And then they try to ignore you and pretend you don't exist. And that's sad. That's really, really, really sad. So if anybody's listening to this and happens to know Joel Miller and would like to give him a copy of this particular mic drop, feel free to do so. And Joel, when you're listening, because I know you will, if you'd like to have this conversation again, publicly, like I requested the first time when you tried to shut me up, I'll give you the same opportunity now. I haven't put myself above you, and I will definitely not put myself beneath you. So you don't get to put me there either. If you'd like to stand as equals and have a conversation as adults, we can. But guess what? It's not going to be on your little fortress of solitude in Essenhaus. Just like it's not going to be at Middlebury Community Schools Entitlement Center. But you can pick the place. You can even pick the time. Just be prepared to stick out the duration of the conversation, and also be prepared for more people than just you and I to be there. And if I don't hear anything from you in response, I'll know you're scared. And cowards go and hide, just like the Middlebury Community Schools Board. When they don't want their truth, they go and hide, and they make it impossible for you to get up next to them. So, Joel, you're part of the problem. And if you have anything to do with perpetuating the corruption at Middlebury Community Schools through your involvement with them in any way, shape, or form, I'm going to find out. Because I'm doing my investigative work. And I love it. Because the more corruption I pull out, the safer the children become. And the more corruption I attack, the less staff members have to defend themselves from attack. If you doubt why I'm doing this, don't. Ask. I'll tell you. Loudly. So, In conclusion, I'm going to say this out to everybody else who may or may not be involved in Middlebury Community Schools, Middlebury Community's corruption. Your secrets are coming. How you want them revealed can be completely up to you, but they're going to be revealed. And yeah, Joel, that's a threat. I hereby threaten to reveal the truth that you are hiding because you are using it in a corrupt way to hurt children. Feel free to sue me. I'll go ahead and put it out there. Like, it's public right now. You go right ahead. Now, what am I going to do in order to enact that threat? Nothing more than I'm doing right now. I don't have a violent bone in my body. I have many defensive ones. But I don't like to hurt people unnecessarily. I don't like to hurt people, period. You do. You hurt me when I was there by trying to shut me up and make me feel small. You made the former graduate who was standing next to me that used to work for you feel even worse about having even spoken up and sharing her truth. So, Joel, you're not a good guy, bro. And I know that there's 85% of the community that right now will rally behind you and be like, oh my gosh, he's such a great guy. He does this, and he does that, and he donates. And you're right. You are right. I'm not going to argue with you. I believe 85% of Joel Miller is fine. I believe the part of him that's corrupt, that puts himself above everybody else and puts people beneath him, that needs to go. It's called humility, Joel. And it sounds like you've been standing at the top of your ladder for way too long that you forgot what it feels like to be a child who's scared to share their truth. And I'm sorry if my advocacy cut into your profits that day. I actually do. I am apologetic of that because I would rather not have my advocacy interfere with anybody's business. I'd rather advocate at the school board meeting legally like everybody else does, instead of having a trespass that's been illegally put on me for no reason that anybody cares to explain. And I guess I'm a little bit more emboldened as I kind of come to a conclusion with this one, because as more stories come to me, as more truths are revealed to me, the character of the people of Middlebury become very clear. So if you have corruption in you, if you've got secrets that you've been hiding that have been hurting children or hurting staff members or anybody else, I'm coming after them hard. You haven't been able to stop me now. You haven't been able to stop me then. Pretty sure you're not going to be able to stop me in the future. So, that being said, I will share another truth with you regarding Joel Miller. And this comes from a prominent member of Middlebury Community Schools. Or Middlebury Community, not associated with the school system. It's a family that, a couple things you guys need to know about Joel. He's not the humble, leader of the Essenhaus that you might think. He also owns a lot of local properties. He's pretty, wealthy and can throw his weight around, which makes perfect sense why he feels entitled. But from one of the stories out of people that he has governed, been a boss to, been a landlord to, all of that. I'm going to introduce you to a phrase here at the end that we call conditional kindness. And conditional kindness is kind of the opposite of unconditional positive regard, which I know is a term that you're probably familiar with. Conditional kindness is when somebody tells you something and you, like, if you go to them and you plead for them for help and they offer to help you and they tell you everything's going to be okay, and then you work with them on how to make an unfortunate situation livable and try to, do the best you can to not do wrong by anyone. These are the kind people that will say, hey, you know what, it's okay. If you can't pay your rent right now, give it another month and we'll see, especially with COVID. And granted, it's a business, but if the federal government had to get involved at some point and tell people to stop evicting people, it should tell you a little bit something about caring about the people that actually rent from you. Well, Joel Miller apparently had made a promise to a family when they had fallen on hard times during COVID, like most of us had, and they'd fallen behind on their rent payments, and Joel was quoted as saying, you know what, it's okay. Take your time, we all understand. Just pay me when you can. And that was Joel's conditional kindness statement for that moment. And it worked. So they worked on an arrangement. And she was paying when she could. And the family was paying when they could. Over the course of 5 months or so, it was a little bit of payments here, a little bit of not. And I'm only hearing this story secondhand. So again, you can take the truth of it if you will. But based on what I know about Joel's character, what he said next doesn't surprise me. He apparently only let this go on for a little while before telling that tenant, you have until the end of the month to pay everything. And if you don't, we're going to evict you. And that tenant said, what about what you said, that we were working on it, that I could pay when I could, that, I've been paying the last few payments as well. Why is it that you want me to, why now all of a sudden? And Joel responded with a famous Andrew Wood line that I absolutely love. I think it's a favorite among corrupt politicians. I never said that. I never said you could pay when you can't. No, this is a business. We run a business here, and I expect you to pay by this date. That's what Joel said. So conditional kindness is kind of like Indian giving. You make an arrangement with someone, they show you favor, they give you grace, but it's not the grace that you would find maybe coming from God. It's not the grace that you would get from what I would say contemporary Christianity would try to preach. It's conditional. It's conditional grace. And that's anti-Jesus, because he had no conditions on loving anyone, ever. I say that only because Joel's claim, he refers to himself as a good Christian man. And I'm sure that he does think that in his mind. But when you eliminate the parts of who you are that you don't like to look at in the mirror, you can look blameless in a mirror. But that doesn't mean you're blameless in the eyes of the people that you're corruptly hurting. So since Joel revealed himself to be of conditional kindness, and based on my interaction with him at the Essenhaus, I'm going to go ahead and say out there that Joel is part of the corrupt problem. And he's perpetuating the corrupt problem that continues in Middlebury. And it affects the students, especially the ones that would try to work for him. It affects families, especially the ones that try to rent from him. And God forbid now, after this goes out, that these people that are sharing these stories, watch Joel go after him and try to evict him right now. Watch it happen. The conditional kindness is gone. Like, oh my God, I can't believe you told the truth. I'm taking your house now. You and your 4 kids can go out on the road. I hope you don't do that, Joel. That would look pretty bad for you. But I really don't care how much it looks bad on you as much as it is for what it would do to the children or the family. Like putting them in such financial straits that their entire future is afflicted negatively and kids aren't able to go to college. That just smells of corruption. So Joel, I did everything you asked. I left your property when you told me to. I did not put you on any of the recordings that I recorded, even though I could have. I still chose not to, out of respect. I don't know why. It's just probably because I respect every person to some degree, even those that try to take advantage of others. That's probably why. So your face is not on any of my videos. Your words are not recorded in anything that I have put out. But my words are. And so are the words of the community, and words of your tenants, and words of people who've worked for you. I wonder what your mom and dad would think about how the corruption in Das Dutchman Essenhaus is tied into the corruption at Middlebury Community Schools. I know that they're probably enjoying themselves in Florida and probably don't care as much about their first one now that they've got dirt, Essenhaus down there. But I don't know, Joel. It looks bad. You have a habit of reaching out to your employees' parents when they're doing things that you don't like in order to instill fear in them. Maybe I'll just go to the Essenhaus in Florida. My grandparents live down there too, so that sounds great, actually. Is it Sarasota? I'll have to look into it. The great thing about sharing the truth is you can share it wherever you'd like, whenever you'd like, however loudly is like that you would like, and no one can stop you. As long as you do so in a way that's legal, that's ethical, and isn't trying to cause violent, riotous eruptions. Civil disobedience. A great, great man modeled that long before my time, and he was a reverend. And if Dr. Martin Luther King can disobey civilly to stand up for those who cannot stand for themselves, then I'll walk in the foot of giants. And I'll try to advocate for those that can't stand up for themselves because you're marginalizing them, because you're corrupt. I don't have a problem with that. In fact, I would invite anybody to follow in Dr. King's example. If you have a truth that you need to stare and you wanted to stand up and say it, say it. And do it civilly disobedient as often as possible. Don't break any laws, but don't cause any harm. Your words will do enough. And here's the thing that's really, for those of you guys that have stayed to the end, I'm going to tell you a little something about the psychology behind all this, because you won't ever see this part, but I'll tell you because most of you guys would want to know. Joel Miller right now is seething. He can't believe that I would have the gall to do any of this, to share my truth, my experience, my opinion of a man that I met for the better part of 5 minutes. And after hearing tons of stories from people who worked with him and rented from him, I can determine that Joel is angry that I am sharing his truth. I can almost feel it. But Joel, when you showed up that day, you had an opportunity to be graceful to a cause much greater than yourself and your business, and you chose not to. Here are the consequences of your actions. Your corruption will continue to be exposed. And if you don't think it will, if I can get a man on the inside of Middlebury Community Schools, do you think it'll be that hard when you're hiring all of the students that come out of Middlebury Community Schools that information won't come out? Are you going to do like a mass change of your business right now that like Middlebury Community Schools does? Everybody's in a gag order. You cannot talk to Malahan. If you talk to Malahan, you're in trouble. You can go ahead and put that out there too. And the more you try to wring the neck of the truth that really, really, really needs to come out, the worse you're going to look. So go for it, Joel. The ball is in your court, and all eyes are on you now. No cameras, like you asked, but a lot of ears. I hope that you have a really good day. I hope that business at the Essenhaus is fruitful. I hope that the people that attend to the Essenhaus enjoy what it is that you're able to provide for them, because it really is a nice place to eat. But if you continue your corruption, you'll see me again. And next time I won't be nice. I'll be blunt. And I don't think you'll like that. Thanks for sticking with me up to this point, guys. I appreciate you. If you have any stories that you want to share about this guy whatsoever, reach out to me. Still working through the scheduling, try to figure out how we're going to go live starting next week going forward. So that we can do some of these conversations while people are chiming in and typing things, and we can actually say the comments out there and people can see them. So I'm still working on that. But I love you guys. I really do. And I'm really, really sorry that this corruption extends beyond what I thought was just a school corporation. But the more you let me know, the more I'm able to fight for you, and the more I will. Love you guys. We out.